The stars stretched out before Earth like an endless ocean, filled with untold mysteries. The war had been long and brutal. For years, humanity had fought against alien invaders, the Varkanians, a ruthless race bent on domination. Earth's forces had suffered unimaginable losses, and hope seemed to fade with every passing day. Commander Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the Valar looking out at the stars. The weight of command was heavy on her shoulders, and she knew the war could not go on forever. Then, one day, everything changed. A transmission came through, a message from the Varkanians themselves. The enemy, who had once sworn to annihilate humanity, now offered peace. The message was direct, calm, almost to calm. They had grown tired of the war, they said, and were willing to negotiate a treaty, a chance for peace. It sounded too good to be true. Hayes could feel a knot form in her stomach. Commander, the Varkanians are requesting a meeting, her communications officer said, breaking her from her thoughts. Lisa turned to him, her brow furrowing. A meeting? She asked, surprised. Why now? Why would they suddenly want peace? I don't know, ma'am, but it's from their leader, High General Varnak. They're offering a ceasefire, and the terms seemed favorable. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had been fighting for so long, the idea of peace felt foreign. Lisa knew that every moment spent at war took its toll on her crew, on Earth itself. But peace with the thought was almost impossible to believe. We need to discuss this with the President, she said, her voice firm. Prepare the fleet for any possibility, but we're going to hear them out, soon. The top leaders of Earth were gathered in a secure room, and the Varkanians' transmission appeared on the large screen. High General Varnak's face appeared, calm and cold as always. Commander Hayes, he said, his voice like gravel. The war has cost us both sides much. We propose a peace treaty. If you accept, there will be no more bloodshed. Your people will be free from the conflict, and we will leave your world in peace. We will share technology, resources, and trade. A new era of cooperation will begin. Lisa could hardly believe what she was hearing. Why now? She asked, unable to keep the suspicion from her voice. Why would you suddenly offer peace after all this time? Varnak's expression didn't change. The war has reached a point where it no longer serves our interests. We've decided that further destruction is unnecessary. Our terms are fair. It's time to end this. The meeting lasted for hours, with Earth's leaders going over the details of the treaty. The Varkanians promised to withdraw their forces and provide assistance in rebuilding Earth's devastated cities. In exchange, humanity would disarm and agree to not. On paper, it sounded like the perfect solution. The war would finally be over. But something nagged at Lisa. The timing was off. Why would the Varkanians suddenly choose peace? She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Peace was too tempting, too easy. For years, the Varkanians had shown no mercy. Why would they start now? She called her trusted officers into her quarters after the meeting. There's something we're not seeing, Lisa said, her voice low. I don't trust them. We need to be prepared for something else. I won't let us be caught off guard. Her first officer, Lieutenant Mark Evans, nodded. I agree. It feels like a trap. We've fought too long to be fooled now. The room fell silent as the crew considered the implications. Lisa knew the stakes were higher than ever. If the Varkanians were truly sincere, this could be the end of the war. But if it was a trap, humanity had to be ready to fight back. As the transmission ended and the room cleared, Lisa stood alone, staring out at the stars. She couldn't shake the feeling that peace wasn't what it seemed. The Varkanians had finally extended an olive branch, but she had a bad feeling about what might lie beneath it. With a heavy heart, she made a decision. The peace treaty would be accepted, but humanity would prepare for war, just in case. Because, if the Varkanians had planned a trap, humanity would be ready, and when that day came, humanity would fight back with everything it had. The peace offer had been accepted, but Commander Lisa Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. Every decision made over the next few days felt like a gamble. Humanity had been lured into a false sense of security by the Varkanians, but the real question was, what were they planning? Despite the promise of peace, the preparations for the meeting began under a cloud of tension. Lisa ordered the fleet to remain on high alert. Every officer, every crew member, had been drilled on the importance of remaining vigilant. They had survived countless battles, but now, more than ever, the real test was their ability to recognize when the war was not over. Lisa spent the nights pacing in her quarters, her thoughts running 1,000 miles a minute. Why would the Varkanians want peace now? For years, they had shown no mercy, crushing Earth's forces without hesitation. Their sudden shift in attitude felt too rehearsed. What if the real goal wasn't peace, but something far darker? Meanwhile, the first wave of human delegates made their way to the neutral zone, a massive space station located on the edge of the Varkanian territory. It was here that the peace talks were set to take place. Lisa's crew stood by, prepared for any unexpected change. As the meeting loomed closer, the air around them grew thick with uncertainty. The crew knew the stakes. They knew that the fate of humanity could rest on one simple decision. The Varkanians arrived first. Their ships, sleek and silent, descended onto the station. They were imposing, with strange, dark designs that seemed to absorb the light around them. Their ambassador Varnak was the same cold and calculating face that had appeared on the transmission. This time, though, there was something else, something hidden behind his steely eyes. Lisa's instincts screamed at her, but she couldn't put her finger on why. The peace talks began with formalities. The Varkanians presented the treaty, full of promises, disarmament, cooperation, and the withdrawal of their forces. The representatives on both sides nodded, taking the terms seriously. But Lisa watched the room carefully, noting the small details that others might overlook, the way the Varkanians' eyes never fully met anyone else's, the slight twitch of their fingers, the way their voices sounded rehearsed. But it wasn't until the second day of negotiations that things began to shift. Suddenly, a faint but unmistakable hum filled the air. Lisa's heart raced as the quiet drone grew louder, like an unseen threat approaching. She exchanged glances with her senior officers, who were already on edge. The hum turned into a deep vibration, shaking the floor beneath them. The Varkanians remained unfazed, their faces unreadable. That was when the first attack came, without warning. The station's outer defenses were breached by an unknown force. Massive energy pulses rained down from the sky, slamming into the space station's shields. The lights flickered, and alarms screamed through the air. Earth's delegates scrambled for cover, and the peace talks dissolved into chaos. Commander Hayes was immediately informed that enemy ships had breached the outer perimeter. The Varkanians were no longer offering peace, they were launching an assault. Lisa quickly realized what had happened. The peace treaty had been nothing but a ruse way to catch Earth off guard. The Varkanians had never intended to stop the war. The ceasefire was a trap to lull them into a false sense of security. Now, they had trapped humanity on the space station, ready to wipe out Earth's representatives. But humanity wasn't done yet. Commander Hayes gave the order to prepare for battle. The crew of the Valar and every other ship in Earth's fleet scrambled to respond. The Varkanians had underestimated them. Earth's military, though taken by surprise, had the training and determination to strike back. Lisa watched as her crew worked swiftly to defend the station, and she knew in her heart that the peace treaty had been the beginning of a new, deadlier phase of the war. The Varkanians had set the trap, but humanity would show them that they were not to be underestimated. The battle for survival had only just begun. The battle was chaotic, and the station trembled with the force of each explosion. Commander Lisa Hayes stood at the helm of the Valar, watching the flickering lights of the space station as enemy ships closed in. The Varkanians had made their move, but they had no idea what humanity was capable of. Lisa's hands gripped the command console as she watched the incoming fleet on the screen. The Varkanians' ships, sleek and menacing, were closing in on the space station. Their weapons fired relentlessly, sending pulses of energy through the station's defenses, causing massive ruptures in the hull. But Earth's ships were coming, their engines igniting as they rushed to respond to the surprise attack. "We can't hold them off much longer, Commander," Lieutenant Evans shouted from his post. The station's shields were already weakening, and the enemy had already breached 2 sections of the station. "We need to take the fight to them," Lisa said, her voice cold and resolute. "Prepare the fleet. Launch all interceptors and prepare to counterattack." As the Valar moved out, Lisa felt the weight of leadership bearing down on her. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was humanity's fight to prove that they would never fall to deception and betrayal. The Varkanians had underestimated Earth's resolve. Humanity's will to survive was stronger than any weapon the aliens could throw at them. The first wave of Earth's interceptors rocketed into the vast expanse of space, their engines roaring with power. These were no ordinary ships. They were fast, nimble, and armed to the teeth with advanced weaponry. As the Varkanian ships closed in, the interceptors weaved and darted between their larger enemies, firing volleys of missiles and energy blasts that pierced the enemy hulls. Lisa watched from the bridge as Earth's fleet took position, creating a barrier around the station. The Varkanians were caught off guard. They had anticipated a quick victory, thinking that Earth's forces would be crippled by their surprise attack. But the humans were not so easily broken. Incoming fire, Evans shouted as another energy blast struck the Valor. The ship rocked, but its reinforced hull held firm. "Return fire," Lisa barked. "Target their lead ship. Now." The Valor's weapons hummed to life, unleashing a torrent of firepower. Plasma bolts and laser beams streaked toward the Varkanian fleet, striking their lead ship. It shuddered violently, and then exploded in a burst of light, sending debris scattering into space. "One down," Evans cheered, but Lisa's face remained serious. The Varkanians had far more ships, and this was just the beginning. She knew that their main goal was the destruction of the space station. If they lost that, they would lose everything. On the station's surface, things were just as intense. The crew had abandoned the peace talks and shifted to full defense mode. Explosions echoed through the hallways as alien soldiers breached multiple levels of the station, their sleek, insect-like armor glistening in the dim emergency lights. The station's defenders fought back fiercely, but they were outnumbered. Lisa's eyes narrowed as she watched the battle unfold. It was becoming clear that the Varkanians weren't just here to cripple Earth, they wanted to finish what they had started and wipe out humanity once and for all. But Earth wasn't backing down. "Not today, Commander. We've got a problem," Evans said urgently. "The Varkanians are targeting the central reactor. If they get to it, we're done for." Lisa's heart raced. The reactor was the station's lifeblood. If they lost it, Earth's fleet wouldn't have enough power to continue the fight. "Divert all forces to the reactor core." "We can't let them get there," she ordered, her voice sharp. The Valor and the rest of Earth's fleet pushed forward, engaging the Varkanians head-on. Humanity's fleet moved with precision, hitting the enemy ships hard and fast. But the battle wasn't over. Every shot fired, every maneuver, brought them closer to victory or to losing everything. As the space station began to shake under the weight of the battle, Lisa couldn't help but feel a surge of defiance. Humanity wasn't going to just roll over and die. The Varkanians had made a terrible mistake, and Lisa Hayes was determined to make them regret it. The battle raged on, the stars around Earth's fleet flickering like sparks from a firestorm. Commander Lisa Hayes gripped the command chair tightly, her eyes fixed on the battlefield. Earth's fleet had begun to regain some control, but the fight wasn't over. The Varkanians had underestimated humanity's resolve, but now, the enemy was desperate. They had thrown everything at the humans, every ship, every weapon, but the tide was slowly shifting. "Commander, we've taken out half of their fleet," Lieutenant Evans reported, his voice tense but hopeful. "The Varkanians are pulling back, but they're not retreating. They're regrouping for a final push." Lisa nodded, her mind racing. The Varkanians had no intention of backing down. Their forces were formidable, but humanity wasn't about to be beaten. Every officer on the Valor, every soldier on Earth's ships, was fighting for the future. For survival, get the fleet into formation. "We hit them all at once," Lisa ordered. "I want every ship primed and ready to strike. We'll end this now, or they'll end us." As the orders went out, Earth's ships shifted into position, their weapons powered up. The Varkanians, who had initially thought the war was over, were now scrambling to regroup. But it was too late. Humanity had adapted to the chaos, evolving with each battle, each loss. Now, Earth's fleet was ready to make its move. Lisa watched as the Varkanians' remaining ships began to close in on their position. There was no time to waste. The final push had begun. The enemy's ships were larger, more heavily armored, but Earth's fleet was faster, more agile. The human fleet was small in comparison, but it had something the Varkanians didn't: determination. "Now," Lisa shouted. A wave of firepower erupted from the Valor and the surrounding ships. Lasers, missiles, and plasma rounds lit up the void, slamming into the Varkanian ships. The enemy was thrown into chaos, their ships disintegrating in flashes of light as humanity's fleet tore through their ranks. But Lisa knew this was only the beginning. The Varkanians had one last weapon, one final card to play. The moment the first wave of their ships started to break apart, a massive, heavily armored warship appeared from behind a nearby moon. It was bigger than anything Lisa had ever seen, dark, imposing, and surrounded by a cloud of smaller ships. "That's their flagship," Evans said, his voice filled with awe and dread. It's armed to the teeth. If we don't take it down, we won't win." Lisa's heart sank as she realized the full scale of the challenge before them. This was the Varkanians' last stand. If they could take down the Varka, the war could be over. But if they failed, humanity would be facing total annihilation. "All ships, target the Varka," Lisa ordered, her voice steady but firm. "We take it down, we end this." The fleet surged forward, their weapons locked on the massive flagship. But the Varka was no easy target. It fired back with devastating force. energy blasts that hit Earth's ships with terrifying precision. The Valor took a direct hit, shaking violently, but the crew held strong. They couldn't afford to back down now. As the Valkyr drew closer, Lisa's mind raced. Every move had to be calculated. Every strike had to be perfect. They couldn't win this fight through sheer firepower alone. They needed strategy. They needed teamwork. Focus fire on their weak spots, Lisa instructed. We've got to break through their defenses, and we need to do it now. The battle became a brutal dance, with the Valkyr and Earth's ships exchanging fire in a deadly game of cat and mouse. The Valkyr's shields were powerful, but they had one flaw. The energy core at its center was exposed. If they could hit it, they could destroy the entire ship. Prepare to launch the torpedoes. Lisa called out, target the core. The Valor's torpedo bays opened, and the deadly weapon shot through the blackness of space, speeding toward their target. The Valkyr fired back, but it was too late. One by one, the torpedoes hit their mark, striking the exposed core of the flagship. The explosion was deafening. The Valkyr erupted in a massive burst of light, sending shockwaves through space. The Varkanians' flagship was destroyed, and with it, their last chance for victory. The remaining enemy ships scattered, retreating into the vastness of space. Earth's fleet had won, but as Lisa looked out into the stars, she knew this was only a battle. The war was far from over. The Valkyr had been destroyed, but the victory felt hollow to Commander Lisa Hayes. The aftermath of the battle was unsettling. The once powerful Varkanian fleet was now in disarray, but that didn't mean humanity was safe. The space around them was eerily quiet, the remnants of shattered ships drifting in the cold expanse. It wasn't a clean victory. There were no cheers, no celebration, just the steady hum of the Valor's engines as they moved cautiously through the wreckage. Lisa's mind raced. The Varkanians were known for their resilience, their ability to regroup after defeat. If this battle was anything to go by, their true weapon wasn't their ships, but their sheer determination. They would regroup. They always did. We've won the field, Commander Lieutenant Evans said, his voice tight. But the question is, what now? Lisa didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned her gaze to the stars, her thoughts far away. The destruction of the Valkyr had crippled the Varkanian fleet, but their forces had been spread across the galaxy. They had to be regrouping, plotting their next move. She could feel it. The calm before the storm. Prep the crew, she said, finally breaking the silence. We're not done yet. The Valor had been battered during the fight, its hull scarred and battered, but it was still operational. The crew had done their jobs with precision, and Lisa couldn't have been more proud. But now they faced a bigger challenge than ever before. It wasn't just about winning battles. It was about surviving the war. Her officers gathered around the command table, faces grim. Commander Lieutenant Miller, the fleet's tactical officer, began. We've intercepted a Varkanian transmission. It's encrypted, but we're working to decrypt it. If it's what I think it is, they're preparing to launch a full-scale invasion of Earth. The room went still. Even Evans, usually calm in the face of danger, looked worried. How long do we have? Not long, Miller replied. We estimate they're within striking distance of Earth within the next 48 hours. Their fleet is scattered, but they're pulling together reinforcements. Lisa's mind was racing. Then we don't wait for them to come to us. We go after them. She could see the surprise on the faces of her crew. The idea of taking the fight to the Varkanians was risky, but it was their best option. The Valor's fleet wasn't large, but it was fast, and it was hungry for victory. We'll need to split the fleet into 3 groups, Lisa continued. Evans, you'll take the first group. Miller, you're with me on the second. We'll hit them at their weakest points, disrupt their supply lines. Take out their reinforcements before they can get to Earth. We're pushing them to the edge, Commander Evans said, his voice steady but filled with determination. Are we sure about this? Lisa's gaze sharpened. We have no other choice. If we let them regroup, they'll hit us harder next time. We have to strike first, and we have to do it now. There was a pause. Then Evans nodded. Understood. We'll be ready. The crew began to move, preparing for the next phase of the war. There was no room for hesitation now. The Valor's crew had been through hell together, and Lisa trusted each of them with her life. They had proven time and again that they were capable of incredible things. This mission, though, was different. It was not just a fight for survival. It was the key to humanity's future. As the fleet moved out, Lisa stood at the helm, her eyes focused on the distance. Earth was counting on them. But this was more than that. This was personal. The Varkanians had tried to destroy humanity once before, and now, they would pay for their arrogance. It wouldn't be an easy fight. It would take everything they had. But Lisa knew this. Humanity was far stronger than any enemy could ever imagine, and they were ready to strike back. The plan was set. The fleet divided into 3 strike groups, each tasked with a specific mission to cripple the Varkanian forces before they could regroup. Commander Lisa Hayes sat at the helm of the Valar, her hands steady as the ship glided through the cold emptiness of space. The tension aboard the ship was palpably officer. Every crew member knew the stakes. This wasn't just another battle. This was the turning point. If they could break the Varkanians before they reached Earth, humanity might stand a chance at lasting peace. But if they failed, Earth would face a war like no other. As the fleet approached their first target, the reality of their situation began to set in. The Varkanians had been caught off guard by the loss of their flagship, the Varka, and now they were scrambling to reorganize their forces. But Lisa knew better than anyone this was no time to get complacent. The Varkanians were relentless, and if they had one thing on their side, it was their ability to adapt quickly. "Commander, we've reached the first target," Lieutenant Evans said, his voice calm but with an edge of urgency. "We're in position to strike." Lisa nodded, her mind already racing ahead to the next steps. "Proceed as planned." "Miller, how are we doing on the Varkanian transmission?" Miller, sitting at his station, didn't look up from his screen. "I've decrypted part of it. It's worse than we thought. They're calling for reinforcements from all corners of the galaxy. We're running out of time." Lisa's jaw clenched. "Then we move fast. Destroy everything they're using to regroup. No mercy." As the Valar and the other 2 strike groups descended on their respective targets, the reality of their task became clearer. The Varkanians had set up a vast network of supply lines and hidden fortresses in uncharted areas of space. Destroying them would cripple the Varkanians' ability to fight back, but it would also make them desperate. "Commander, the enemy is deploying heavy defenses," Miller reported. "We're going to need more firepower if we want to breach their defenses in time." Lisa's gaze hardened. "Get ready for a fight. We push through, no matter the cost." The Valar's weapons systems roared to life as they launched a barrage of missiles at the enemy fortress, the explosion illuminating the dark expanse of space. The Varkanians retaliated with equal force, their ships streaking through space, firing waves of plasma and energy weapons. "Shields at 40%, Evans called out as the ship rocked with the impact of enemy fire. But Lisa didn't flinch. This wasn't their first battle, and it wouldn't be their last. They would push forward, no matter what. "Return fire. Focus on their weapons systems," she commanded. The Valar's guns fired back, striking enemy ships with devastating precision. The battle was fierce, but Lisa could feel the momentum shift as Earth's forces fought back with relentless determination. Each Varkanian ship they destroyed was a small victory, but it wasn't enough. They needed to hit them harder. "Commander, there's a weak spot in their defense grid," Miller said, his eyes scanning his screen. "If we can destroy their communications hub, we can cut off their reinforcements." Lisa didn't hesitate. "Take it out now." The Valar's torpedo bay opened and a deadly missile shot forward, striking the Varkanian communications hub with pinpoint accuracy. The explosion was massive, sending shockwaves through the enemy fleet. The Varkanians were caught off guard. Their ability to coordinate their forces was shattered. The battle continued, but now the Varkanians were disoriented, struggling to regain control. Earth's fleet pushed forward, taking advantage of the chaos they had created. With each passing moment, it became clearer that the Varkanians were on the brink of collapse. "We've done it, Commander," Evans said, his voice filled with relief. "Their fleet is in disarray. They're retreating." Lisa didn't let herself relax. "Not yet. We keep the pressure on. No mercy, we finish this now." The Valar and its fleet pressed on, cutting through the remnants of the Varkanian forces. The battle raged for hours, but with each strike, humanity was one step closer to victory. It wasn't easy, and the cost had been high, but Earth's fleet was proving something the Varkanians had never considered. Humanity was not so easily crushed. They were a force to be reckoned with, and as Lisa watched the remaining Varkanian ships retreating into the void, she knew they had just taken the first step toward victory. The war wasn't over yet, but humanity had just shown the universe what it truly meant to fight back. The stars ahead gleamed like diamonds against the pitch-black backdrop of space. But Commander Lisa Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that peace was still a distant dream. After hours of relentless pursuit, the final remnants of the Varkanian fleet were in retreat. Their once proud ships now scattered across the galaxy like broken shards of glass. But the war was far from over. The Varkanians had underestimated humanity, and now, they were learning just how costly that mistake would be. Lisa stood on the bridge of the Valar, her gaze fixed on the massive screen ahead. The enemy forces had been crippled, but the core of the Varkanian command structure still lay hidden somewhere in the depths of space. There was no way to know where their central command was located. But one thing was clear. The Vulcanians weren't going to give up easily. They had the resources, the numbers, and the will to fight to the bitter end. Commander Evans said, breaking the silence, "The enemy has scattered, but they're still alive. We need to track them down before they regroup. Otherwise this will just drag out longer than we can afford." Lisa nodded, her mind sharp and calculating. "Prepare the fleet for pursuit. We hit them hard now, or we'll be chasing them across the galaxy for months." The Valar and the rest of Earth's fleet surged forward, cutting through the void like a blade through flesh. With each passing minute, their resolve grew stronger. Humanity wasn't going to just survive, they were going to win. And they would make sure the Vulcanians knew the price of their betrayal. The Vulcanians had launched an attack under the guise of peace, but humanity had turned the tables, proving that they would fight for what was theirs, no matter the odds. As the fleet moved deeper into enemy space, Lisa felt the weight of leadership on her shoulders. The crew, though battered and bruised, were still ready for whatever came next. Their faces were grim, but their eyes burned with determination. They had fought for every inch of ground, and they had earned every victory. But the question remained, would the Vulcanians fall back and regroup, or would they make one last stand? Hours passed in silence, the tension growing with each moment. The fleet moved steadily, methodically. The vastness of space stretched endlessly before them, but Lisa knew they were getting closer to the heart of the enemy's forces. They had to be. The Valar's sensors had picked up traces of Vulcanian activity, faint signatures of ships moving in formation, as though they were trying to regroup for a final push. "Commander, we've located their fleet," Miller's voice came through, cutting through the silence. "They're setting up a defense line. They're preparing for their last stand." Lisa's jaw tightened. "Prepare for battle," she ordered, her voice unwavering. "This ends today." The Valar's engines roared to life as the fleet engaged the remnants of the Vulcanian forces. This would be the final confrontation, the one that determined the fate of Earth. But it wasn't just about Earth, it was about humanity's will to survive, to rise above the ashes of defeat and claim their future. The Vulcanians fought fiercely, but the cracks in their defenses were too wide now. Their ships, once formidable, were falling one by one as Earth's forces pounded them with everything they had. It wasn't just firepower that made the difference, it was the sheer determination of humanity to protect their home, their families, their future. As the last of the Vulcanian ships disintegrated in a brilliant burst of light, Lisa allowed herself a brief moment of relief. The battle was won, but as she watched the debris scatter across space, she knew this victory had come at a heavy cost. Many lives had been lost, many sacrifices made, but they had proven that humanity was not to be underestimated. The war was over, but the road to peace would not be easy. Lisa's heart was heavy as she looked out into the stars, knowing that the galaxy would never forget the price humanity had paid. But for now, they had won. Earth had been saved, and humanity's spirit remained unbroken.